All right, the next item, another issue that gets us out of the state of Wisconsin, going to Florida. Consideration of approval for science trip to Florida as a board-approved activity. Mr. Ewers is here to tell us about this trip.
Sure. There are numerous websites, but I have basically the same information that the kids have if you wanted to take one and just kind of pass it down. You can kind of see there is the itinerary available there for you to kind of see the types of experiences that the kids would have an opportunity to have. Basically what had happened was I had seen numerous programs over the past few years offered where companies come in and ask teachers, would you think this would be valuable, and recommend. Well, basically a colleague gave them my name and said, well, maybe Steve Ewers would be interested in it. So I looked it up. Took a look at a number of the different programs that they have available. They have not only science programs, but also a number of social studies type programs, trips to DC, Costa Rica as well, a number of trips to Florida. And the program that we selected, called Habitat H2O, is probably the most affordable option, and it still has a significant cost to it. But the programming, the itinerary, if you take a look, you can kind of see what the itinerary looks like here. If you look at, there's one document. Oh, fantastic, yeah. And you can see the types of experiences that the kids are going to have. Basically, they get to be fitted for snorkeling gear. They'll have an opportunity to snorkel with manatees. We'll be dissecting sharks. There's a virtual reality type activity where they're basically in a movie theater type setting, and they are replicating predator and prey scenarios within the aquatic life that we're going to be experiencing. It's just a really neat program. It's 4 days and 3 nights. We would be flying out of Milwaukee. Basically, when I first looked at this, my honest concern always is with when businesses are offering prepackaged type programs is the cost. And the concern I always have, as we all do as educators, is you don't want to exclude people, and that's a real concern that I have. A couple items to note is that this company, if a family is making less than $85,000 a year, they will qualify for financial assistance, where there's basically a grant program available, an endowment program where it'll be available to them. Parents can basically, before they make any decisions, is this affordable or not, they can find out how much assistance they can have. We are going to be fundraising as well. I haven't decided exactly our primary means of fundraising. I wanted to wait till we had kind of a primary group that was committed and to discuss it. We have, through this company, it's like I said, it's pretty prepackaged. They do the thousands of trips a year. They told my connection, Lindsay Tennyson, her name is, said there's 25 different schools in the area, and I'm going to take that as the state, that are participating this year in trips of this nature. And they have it laid out from, selling gift wrap to the bread braids to everything you've seen basically in fundraising. In addition, what is pretty unique about it, and I'm pretty impressed with so far, is how organized they are. It's very streamlined. It's all online. Basically, as parents register their own children, they will have their own account. Teachers, the school district really does not handle anything in terms of money for each individual kids. It is all basically their own account. They're registered with our trip, and that's basically how it will work. So tonight, basically, I'm just wanting to share with you, another of the learning opportunities. I think tonight's theme would be distance learning or traveling abroad, but it's great. As I contemplated the feasibility of our kids, affording it, my reluctance led into the conversations I had with not only adults but kids, and the outpouring of excitement is unbelievable. I did mention it to my students that, this is something we're looking into. How many of you would be interested? And wow, of course they're going to be interested. And then, of course, the drawback is, costs. And I'm in the process of organizing a meeting with parents to go through the feasibility of it, the affordability of it. And today I said, how many of your parents do you think would attend this meeting? And I bet you, my goal originally was 15 students. Let's have 15 kids make this a go, and it's available to 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And I bet you on our team alone, there's going to be 50 or 60 families at this meeting. So I'm excited. I have a number of other educators that are willing to chaperone, and it's interesting to see how this will pan out. As reflected on it, in addition, I thought, well, I guess the 6th graders, they have the DC trip, the 5th graders have the DC trip, and the 6th graders kind of do Eagle Bluff. Maybe this will be kind of a 7th and 8th grade trip as it evolves into whatever it will become. And like I said, right now it's available for 6th, 7th, and 8th because I didn't know if this was a viable option for our families in the community. And if it proves to be, maybe we can organize it as such. So instead of taking 50 kids a year through 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, maybe we just make it a 7th and 8th grade trip, or just a 7th grade trip, or maybe just an 8th grade trip. Kind of see how it does develop over time. So, any questions at all?
There was just the, as it's before us now, it's being contemplated as a school-sponsored.
And I think what it is really...
Is that designation mean?
I had a number of conversations with Cindy as well as Steve Buss, and more or less a district-approved field trip, not necessarily sponsored. We would abide by all the same rules as adults and as students, but again, I think when it looks like a district-sponsored field trip, there may be some confusion on can everybody go and what the costs would be. And the last thing I want to do is mislead anyone. And so I believe just signifying it as it's approved by the district. My perspective is I think this is great PR for our district. It's another learning opportunity for our community and our kids, and I wanted to advertise it as such. And I think using the district as a platform to do that is nothing but positive. And that's ultimately, in addition, I do communicate through the kids and their families through my occupation with the Toma School District. And again, in being as such, I think it should be approved. It doesn't have to be sponsored. I don't know if that has a connotation to it, like we're paying me to go or we're paying the kids way to go, and I just don't want any miscommunication with that. So,
well, Steve, you do have on your meeting invite that you've got. You do have it stated on there, pretty much as you said, that you're acting as a trip leader.
Yeah.
But does not represent the school district.
Yeah.
Or school. And it's a non-school sponsored activity.
Yeah, I believe it kind of follows the same format as the 5th grade Washington, D.C. trip. Again, kind of a school-approved field trip, but it is not sponsored by the school district. Same kind of format as far as I understand.
That's the safety patrol?
DC. Yeah, we don't approve the D.C. trip at all, do we?
That's the safety patrol?
Right. I think one of the things that we're struggling with is we do have a non-district sponsored trip policy. And if a trip is not district sponsored, then the staff member who may be wanting to promote the trip really should not be using school to promote that trip. And so Steve would like the opportunity to talk with kids about it in school, have the meeting in his room. So your approval for him to be able to do that, despite the fact that it is, this company has all of the insurance and everything, that they take care of all the liability. He doesn't want to be doing this without board approval, and you're okay that we're offering this opportunity for students.
Meaning, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
I read on here that it said you have the option, the student has the option to earn free high school credit.
That would be through a different program than the Habitat H2O, because these are all middle school kids, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, where we don't really have credits.
Okay.
But they do have programs that would allow for district credit. I didn't pursue any of those. I haven't even asked any of those kinds of questions because it just doesn't relate to us. And so the board does know if the board felt like this wasn't a great idea and you had some real concerns. I mean, it's not a for sure deal. We don't have to do this. I think we could probably solve any issues that we may have, but I did want your approval. I do want the board to I want your opinion on the trip as well.
Yeah, and I personally
technically I don't think we're approving the trip. You're approving the solicitation for students to go on the trip, so that it's not a approval of the trip. If you read AG 2340D.
That was the...
That's the non-district sponsored trips policy.
And so essentially we are approving it under that guideline as a non...
You're not approving it as a trip. It just said permission to solicit may or not be granted. So it's permission to solicit. You're not necessarily making any formal approval of the trip because as you read, all the liability and the welfare of the student will lie with Steve and the company. You're just authorizing him to be able to talk to students on school grounds.
I think it's the same as Mrs. Ritter was just presented, because she has a private company as well that's doing it, and they have the liability insurance and all of that as well. So it's very similar to...
That was my question, how it really actually differed from other trips we essentially approve.
Policy. That's basically...
Well, I think the difference lies is the connection that the person who's pursuing the trip wants to have with the school district. And if it's a school district, and the reason I know this is because we spent a lot of time on it 5 or 6 years ago, not just pulling this out, but really the difference between the two is there are associations, whether it's Steve's or whether it's Amy's trips, that you may or may not ask the school district to sponsor it. I mean, there's a lot of trips that people can get involved with. The difference is Amy has chosen to have that be a school-sponsored trip, and if it's a school-sponsored trip, there should be some nexus to the curriculum that the students are involved in. And certainly, there's a nexus here too, so it could be either or. It's just at this point in time, Steve is, as I'm understanding, is looking to take this trip as a non-sponsor.
And I think the only reason you are is because that's how the company has typically sold this.
Right. I think there's, in some districts and with some boards, there's fear of liabilities in terms of if somebody gets hurt. And I think by presenting it as a non-school sponsored trip, that liability would not fall in the school district. It would fall, it's clearly stated and understood that it's not school sponsored, so that people wouldn't expect that, I guess, to be as clear and transparent as possible in terms of those responsibilities.
So we're saying you can solicit, you can talk to our kids, but it's your trip. It's not our trip. We have no connection to it. It's not school sponsored.
Okay.
And if you want it to be school sponsored, I don't think I have any issue with that. I mean, it's whatever you guys feel would be best. I mean,
Well,
I don't...
That's what I'm trying to think through.
Yeah, I think so.
Why we're making a distinction on this one. The earlier one, on the Spanish one, it was approved as a trip. There was no discussion of school-sponsored or non-school-sponsored.
And I think it's primarily because the publicity things that have been put together by the company, this is their standard stuff, and they just assume everything will be non-school sponsored. And so because that's on here, we need to make sure that
Well, if it accomplishes what you need for us to approve your ability to present this, that's certainly fine.
Great.
With me.
Yeah. And like I say, it's just a prepackaged program, and they prepackage it with, I guess, probably the perspective of least resistance. And some boards may not approve it as a school-sponsored trip. I think they're just preempting that by saying it's not school-sponsored. So that's it.
But if it's not school-sponsored, then why do we have to vote on it?
Because the policy states, I believe, that I wouldn't be able to have the parent meeting in my classroom. I wouldn't be able to email parents. I wouldn't be able to communicate with them. Yeah. So.
And what's the minimum amount of participants?
15. Yeah. And tomorrow night, pending your approval, I'll have a pretty good idea on how that will turn out. And honestly, I've had so many parent-child group people that want to go with their children that I'm confident we're going to have a lot of chaperones. Yes, yeah, right, yeah. So I'm confident that it'll occur. But yeah.
By demand.
Yeah.
So
I'll make a motion to approve the solicitation of this trip, and so that he can solicit the trip in his classroom.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the request by Mr. Ewers to make the presentation and solicit input or interest in this trip to Florida as presented. Any other questions or concerns, comments?
We have to
Confusion?
include in there the non-school sponsored activities. You have to say it's non-school sponsored.
Well, that was written
Just-
as presented, and that's how it was
Okay.
presented, so, I mean, that's sufficient for me unless you think
No, that's fine.
you need something more.
So is that in or not?
No.
No. Anything else? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. The ayes have it, the motion carries, and so that is approved. And sorry to sort of belabor the
No,
policy
not at all.
point. We
Yeah.
want to encourage these
Yes,
things.
absolutely.
I hope you know that, Steve.
You bet, you bet.
It takes work and extra time to put these things together above and beyond all your class time, and so personally, I appreciate teachers that are going to that trouble to try to do these things.
Thank you. And I don't know if I mentioned it or if you read it on there. It is during the summer. So it's June 18th to the 21st, and no school will be missed, which is kind of nice too.
And you're going to need all the packets you can get, right?
Right. Yeah. They gave me 500, and I think that's enough.
wow, yeah.
If you want to keep it, you're welcome to. If you want me to take them back, that'd be great.
I've got a seventh grader. I've got a seventh grader, so I might keep mine.
You already know you're going. I know. Swim with
You're
the
gonna s-
manatees.
The manatees are wonderful.
I'm going to be in Florida in June.
Radio on that internet, find out the price.
Well, they didn't come up with.
No, they didn't give us any.
They gave you like how much the down payment was.
My daughter